Thank you for finding us again. This is not an edition of No Stoplights, but rather our Garnet Trust podcast sponsored by our good friends at Mickey Finn. Some of the bourbon, some of the paraphernalia, and out front, great local business, big Gamecock supporter. We have a special guest. We're not in our studio. We're in the Florence Country Club for a welcome home event in conjunction with the Gamecock Club of Florence, the PD region, and Garnet Trust. All the Garnet Trust backdrop here behind us. And we have with us a very special and esteemed guest, the head football coach at the University of South Carolina, Shane Beamer, is joining us. Shane, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
No, thank you for coming on. The bourbon's mine. And you know, we'll talk after the podcast. Shane, I learned in business, and I want to jump right into it. I learned in business, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. I wrote down a couple of, a football coach should not have to worry about antitrust or collective bargaining or revenue sharing, but you are a football coach in a Southeastern Conference school in one of the most weird times in college football history. I'm not saying what do you think needs to happen, but how has it complicated or made different your job as head football coach at South Carolina?
Yeah, it's been challenging. All of us are going through it for the very first time, so there's not a manual that I can refer to, or there's not a coach that I can call and ask, how did you deal with this? You know, we're all figuring it out for the very first time, and the challenging part is not only are we all dealing with it for the first time, it's changing like weekly, daily, monthly, yearly, what it is around us. And all those things, you prepare all your career to be a head coach, and then you're into different aspects of it that you never even knew were going to be a part of college athletics. And for us, it's challenging, but trying to be creative in how we can make it a positive for the University of South Carolina, trying to make it a positive for us that allows us to be even more successful on the field. And you're trying to stay ahead of your competitors on and off the field in so many ways.
And I don't know fans are angry at one particular group of person or another. I don't think they're angry at the player. I don't think they're angry at the coach. I don't think they're angry at the university. They just feel like, wow, this thing that I have loved all of my life has become a part of my Saturday afternoons in the fall just ain't going to be like it formerly was. Why is it important as a Gamecock fan to support Garnet Trust?
Well, for one, I think people need to be educated. I think so many people are anti-NIL and maybe don't quite understand what NIL is or the positives that come out of it. And you hear horror stories about NIL, but you don't hear about all the great things. And being able to, I want to reward guys like the Carry-On Joyner because they have earned their name, the money and name, image, and likeness, or Tonka Hemingway, or Boogie Huntley, or whoever it may be, Luke Doty. There's so many guys that have done so much for this university that they have earned the ability to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness. But frankly, whether you like it or not, it's here and it's here to stay. And we all want to win. We want to, one, recruit great players at the University of South Carolina that want to be here for the right reasons. We want to be able to retain those players and keep them from going to other schools when they have those opportunities to. But and all in all, one, it can make the college experience better for so many of our student athletes that have earned the right to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness. But it's a competitive advantage for us. And you can be anti-NIL, that's great. But our competitors, the schools that we compete against in the SEC, in this state as well, they're dealing with it with the same thing as well. And you look around college athletics, there's no secret that the best teams are the ones that have the best players. And you combine that with culture, and that's how you win championships. And we've got the culture in place in my mind. And we're continuing to bring in great players as well, but we've also got to be up there where our competitors are from a NIL standpoint also.
How much do you believe coaches should have input regarding where we're headed? Obviously lawyers are debating and arguing, and there's been a Supreme Court lawsuit, and once again we're talking antitrust, revenue sharing, collective bargaining. But from your perspective, as you communicate and have dialogue with other coaches, how much do you believe the coach should have input in where we're headed?
I think we should a lot. And we're the ones that are in the middle of it. And I think, frankly, there's a lot of people that are making some of these laws and decisions that are clueless. And it is what it is. When NIL was coming down the pipe, people said, well, it's not going to turn into a recruiting inducement. Well, of course it was. If you had a brain, you knew that's what it was going to turn into as well. So to at least, I'm not saying that the coaches need to be the ones on Capitol Hill making the decisions. There's a lot of people more smarter than us from that standpoint, but to at least have the opportunity to kind of educate people on what it's like in the middle of it, in the arena, like we are. And people on Capitol Hill have been open to that. And I know Nick Saban was up there earlier this year, and I've been up there a couple times meeting with senators and congressmen here from the state and across the country. So they listen, but certainly what you hear and what's reality aren't always the same. So I'd love to be able to have some input on it. I feel like we do when it comes to things like the recruiting calendar and things like that, but NIL, not a lot. But I think that's always been something that was a hang-up with coaches in the sense that there's a lot of people, take NIL out of it, there's a lot of guys in college athletics that are making decisions on rules, recruiting, calendar, that aren't even coaches. And you see some of these things pass, and you're like, who thought that was a good idea? And, so certainly wanted to have some influence on it from that standpoint.
One of your strategies, and I've not spoken to you directly about this, but from afar, it appears to me that one of the priorities of yours is to not lure recruits here, but rather get quality young men that can play football and make sure they don't look around to try and find somewhere else to go. Has that been purposeful on your side?
Yeah, I always want to make sure that that in the recruiting aspect of it, whether it be recruiting high school seniors or whether it be recruiting transfers, that they're choosing South Carolina for the right reasons. I want a guy that wants to be here for the right reasons. And I understand that there's a monetary part of it, there's an NIL part of it that's just a factor now. I get it. But when we're playing the University of Georgia, or we're playing Clemson or whoever, and it's 4th and 1 in the fourth quarter and we got to have it, I want the guy that came to South Carolina for the right reasons and not because he got the best NIL deal from us. And to me, I truly believe this. I tell people all the time, I believe you win with people, and I want a bunch of championship people around me, and then be able to retain those guys also, because tampering and the transfer portal, it's a thing, and someone that that came to South Carolina for the right reasons, that is from this region, that wants to be here and leave a legacy, whether it be Asia Wilson in women's basketball, or whether it be Luke Doty and Tonka Hemingway and some of those guys I just mentioned in football, guys that are here for the right reasons. We've been able to keep here in this place they're passionate about. And the more that we can recruit guys like that and win with those people, I think the better off we're going to be.
You have spoken publicly in support of Garnet Trust. Why?
Because I know what they stand for one. I know Jeremy Smith and Mark Benoit and the leaders of Garnet Trust and what they're about. I have a great relationship with those guys. I know how collectives across the country, there's some good ones and there's some not so good ones as well. I know that the Garnet Trust is one of the good ones. They're led by good people. They're not just, it's not pay for play. There's a aspect of financial literacy and taxes and things like that they're helping our student athletes with, not just football, but every sport at Carolina. They're helping prepare them for life after college as well. They're in agreement with me that we want to make sure that we take care of the guys we reward the guys that have earned it as well. But they're also, whatever they're getting from a name, image, and likeness standpoint, they're going to earn that, whether it be going out and being a part of speaking engagements and whatnot. It's not just here's what you're getting from an NIL standpoint because you're a good football player. There's going to be some responsibilities that need to be met also. So that's why. And like I said, there's a lot. I talked to other colleagues of mine across college athletics that have a lot of frustrations with the collective at their school. That's not the case here at our place. Garnet Trust is doing it the right way. They're led by good people, and we're just getting started on what we're going to be able to do with that.
Some are concerned. We had the NFL draft recently.
Yeah.
Somebody got a steal at pick 150, and I'll let you kind of elaborate on that in a bit with Spencer Rattler, who I think you would agree he was the model for what NIL should do in college. Let's go there for a second, because Spencer came with a certain reputation. And some argue that he got hurt in the draft because of some immaturity he displayed in a Netflix documentary. How involved were you in addressing that? And why has Spencer been such a success story in relation to Garnet Trust?
Yeah, I think Spencer he maybe had a reputation from the outside, from people that didn't know him, which that wasn't reality.
But you knew him in Oklahoma.
I knew him in Oklahoma, so I knew what we were going to get, what we were getting. I wasn't going to bring in somebody into our program here in Columbia that didn't fit what we were about as a program. I knew he was a really good player, but I knew he was a grounded, humble, hardworking person that was going to make our football team better on and off the field. So that's what I knew when we brought in there. And then he was nothing. He was everything but that, or everything and then some, when it comes from that. He had a decision to make a year ago after the 2022 season. He certainly could have left and gone to the NFL draft at that point because of the way that he finished the season with wins over Tennessee and Clemson. He decided to come back. And like a lot of guys are doing now in college athletics because of NIL and the opportunity to retain players as well. And then my involvement with NFL teams leading up to the draft, I heard from all of them. And I think Spencer earned a lot of respect from those NFL teams with the way that he handled a lot of the adversity that he dealt with this past season, meaning the injuries we had, some of the youth that we were playing around him. He handled that adversity like a champ, like a pro, and that resonated with a lot of NFL teams. So my conversations with the NFL teams, regardless of what maybe the media narrative was, or maybe someone on an NFL team that didn't do their research, my conversations with NFL teams that reached out to me about Spencer, and there were a lot of them, were how impressed they were with how he handled some of the adversity from this past season, how he's matured, how impressed they were if they met him in person at the combine or whatever it might be, and how excited they were for him. So I'll jump on the table for him, and he's a two-time captain at the University of South Carolina. That's nothing that we as coaches decide. That was something that his teammates voted on 2 years in a row. To be a permanent captain, and we do that vote after the season as well. So in December of 2022 and in December of 2023, his teammates voted twice to make him a permanent captain. To me, that says everything and speaks volumes.
And he honored every commitment that Garnet Trust, that he owed Garnet Trust. I mean, He went above and beyond. And I thought that was critically important, not just paying a kid to play football, but rather honor some of these commitments.
He owed everything, and he was appreciative of everything that was given, not just what was given, but who was giving it as well. He's a champ, and proud of him and excited for him.
You're coy enough to not answer this question if you choose not to, and I certainly respect that. But I brought up the NFL draft. The team with the worst record drafts first. There's a reason for that. They believe the health and well-being of the sport is with everybody having a chance to be competitive. I'm not going to call a university's name, but does it concern you as somebody who loves college football? I'm a fan. You're an employee of a major university. Does it concern you that if we stay in this version of the Wild Wild West, some of the humongous universities with enormous budgets could, I don't want to say monopolize all the talent, but could they have such an advantage over the rest of the college football programs that it's unhealthy for the game?
Yeah, I think some of those programs that you may.
Well, let's say Texas A&M, Ohio State, Michigan come to mind.
I think that some of those advantages that those schools have and will continue to have, they've always had, and that's always been a challenge. And to me, it makes it even more critical to make sure that you're recruiting the right people. And to me, the teams that have the most success nowadays in college athletics are the ones that are led by the right people. They're veteran teams. They're got a bunch of leaders on it as well, and they come together as a team. To me, those are the ones that are going to be successful. And I think that's a concern. I think there's things going on in college athletics now coming down the pipe, whether it be revenue sharing or NIL salary cap or whatever it might be, where I think there are people that have those same concerns that you just alluded to. They have them, and they don't want it to get out of whack. And the NFL's great. There is parity, and there's a bunch of 9 and 8 and 10 and 7 teams in the NFL every single year, which is the way the NFL wants it as well. So it's a competitive conference that we're in. It's a competitive nation that we're in from a football standpoint, and each and every school is trying to do what they can to situate their specific program the best for the future.
How do you manage a locker room when kids have ultimately contracts.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a deal. This kid has another deal. People are spiteful, and human nature is to be a little bit envious. These are kids. What has been your strategy to make sure everybody understands? Ultimately, we're trying to win on Saturday morning, or Saturday at 12, or Saturday night.
Yeah, no, it's extremely challenging. I'd be lying to you if I said it wasn't. It goes back to what I said earlier about making sure that you're recruiting the right people and not wanting to bring in someone into our program that NIL is the driving factor for him and everything that he's doing and is a me person. And you find out a lot about that during the recruiting process when you get to know the families, you get to know the parents, you get to know the young man, and you see what's important to him. And we've walked away from some guys that they came on a visit, and either myself or one of our coaches or some of our players would have come to me and said, like, Coach, he's not what we're about here as well. So you try and do the best you can on the front end. And then once they get there, it's honestly, it's just having a lot of open and honest conversations. And we've got coaches on our team that have an NFL experience, and they've talked to our players about how that dynamic has torn apart locker rooms in the NFL. I've had meetings where I kicked everyone out of the meeting, nothing against our coaches, but I kicked everyone out of the room except me and the players. And I sat in a chair in the front of the room in front of 120 players, and we just talked about NIL and some of those things. It's having a lot of individual conversations with players about the why and what's going on and whatnot. But to me, you're honest, you're truthful. At the end of the day, I tell our players all the time, I'm always going to do what's best for the South Carolina football team. And that's NIL related. That's decisions on Saturday. That's decisions throughout the year. And I just try and hold true to that and everything that we're doing, and just try and be honest with our guys.
In the early days of the evolution of Garnet Trust, I think a group of us had a meeting and a conversation, and out of that came a belief that having an effective and impactful and competitive NIL, Garnet Trust, is not going to guarantee success.
Right.
But if we don't, it's going to be hard to be successful.
Absolutely.
You can have the best players, the best guys. It's going to be uber hard, Shane, if we're not competitive in that space.
Absolutely. It's going to be beyond hard. If
nearly impossible.
Yes. You've got to be competitive in that space. No one's saying that we have to have the biggest collective in college football. I don't want that. We don't need that. But we also don't need to be the Oakland A's of Major League Baseball either, where we're gonna hit and run and bunt and steal bases and all that. Like, we got to figure out
sabermetrics.
Yes,
yeah.
We got to figure out, and more power to them. They've won a lot of games doing that, but you want to be competitive. We don't need, on the football field, on the basketball court, on the baseball diamond, we expect to win championships, and we want to be competitive. And we don't want to be one of the bottom third teams in the SEC, bottom four teams, whatever it may be. Well, it's the same thing from an NIL standpoint. Nobody's saying that we have to have the biggest collective, but people say to me, well, Coach, we're waiting for you to win a championship, and we can't wait till you win a championship. Well, it's going to be hard in today's time if you're not competitive from an NIL standpoint. And I don't care what sport you're in, football, baseball, basketball, soccer, it matters. And again, at the end of the day, it's not paying for play. It's retaining your roster, bringing in the right people that are about the Garnet and Black, that want to be here. And there's a lot of horror stories of programs that didn't handle it the right way. And that happens when coaches aren't honest with players. We're always honest with them and have open conversations about them. And we'll continue to as well, and continue to make it with the Garnet Trust a positive for us that allows us to be competitive on Saturdays and bring that championship to Columbia that we want. Last question.
I mean, the likely suspects are always the likely suspects, the wealthy, the well-to-do, the people that have historically given to the university. I mean, they have the ability to be more impactful than most graduates or fans of the university. But I've heard Mark and Jeremy talk a lot about the Bernie Sanders model of fundraising. What do you say to the person out there who eats, breathes, and sleeps Gamecock athletics, but don't have a lot of money? Mm-hmm. I mean, $25 a month, $35, $50, $100, whatever that. I mean, is that impactful? Does that matter if we find enough of those people who will make a somewhat of an investment in Gamecock athletics. And, I mean, pennies make dollars, dollars make $100, hundreds make thousands.
Absolutely. Every little bit helps. We are grateful, and our student athletes are grateful for anything from an NIL standpoint. And this isn't student athletes across college campuses making 6-7 figures. This is those are the rare instances. We're talking about the student athletes, the women's soccer player or the women's volleyball player or the baseball player or football player, whoever it might be that has earned the opportunity to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness. And every little bit helps, and it all adds up. And certainly, we don't need anyone thinking, well, I'm not a 7-figure donor or a 6-figure donor to the university, so I can't make an impact. Well, yes, you can, and you can make a huge impact, and that's what it's going to take. And that's the schools that are doing the best from an NIL standpoint. They have a lot of those donors that are given, I don't want to say a little bit, but given here, given there. And it's not necessarily, very few schools have the 7-figure donors that are just funding NIL collectives. It's a lot of schools that have thousands of people that are giving to their collective, and then all of a sudden it's where they're one of the best collectives in the country, and that's what we need more of. We're not in a big state, you know that, and we need everyone to be a part of that and continue to help. And I'd encourage all of them to continue to educate themselves and learn more about NIL, because just like Spencer, I think there's a narrative out there that's not true when it comes to name, image, and likeness, and all the student athletes at South Carolina, and would encourage everyone, all Gamecocks out there, to continue to educate themselves and learn more about the Garnet Trust and what it's doing for our student athletes currently and going forward.
And I'll say this, you're a humble man, and I appreciate that about you, but the head football coach at an SEC school has the ability to move the meter as much as anybody does in giving to NIL. You heard it from Coach Beamer. We need to support Garnet Trust. We got to be competitive in that space. We don't have to rank number 1, 2, or 3, or 4 in America, but we can't get left behind. We've got to raise enough money and contribute enough money to support these students. We're in flux. I mean, nobody knows where we end up. I mean, once again, there are a lot of legal suits and there are a lot of lawyers arguing about what the new normal will be, but right now, Garnet Trust is the best way to financially support the university to be competitive in college football. Shane's got a big event here in the Florence area. I want to once again thank Mickey Finn's. I don't know if he takes the bourbon or not, but it's his. And I want to thank Shane for coming. I want to thank Mark and Jeremy for helping line it up. I want to thank Rick Benoit, my good buddy at Mickey Finn's, for providing. Well, no, this is Mark in the backdrop. We had a Mickey Finn's down here, but Rick said, "Nah, let's don't goof it up with that." But we got the bourbon out front, and Shane agreed to stay and join us. Thank you a lot for joining this. This is not, once again, no stoplights, but rather the Garnet Trust podcast, sponsored by our good friends at Mickey Finn's. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you. Always great being with you.
Yes, sir.